Hello, everybody. Here we are today for the fourth webinar in our National Tribal Energy Roundtable series. Today, we are talking about hydrogen, ammonia, and clean fuels of the future with our moderators from Shasta Advisors, LLC. We have President Daniel Cardenas with us here and guest speaker, Michelle Fox, Senior Advisor for Equity, Labor, and Economic Prosperity with the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technologies Office of the U.S. Department of Energy. Unfortunately, Michael Hopkins will not be able to join us today, though Mr. Cardenas will serve as both a speaker and a moderator. So before we start, just a few words about our hosting program. I am Michelle Littlefield. I am a program coordinator with the USEA Consensus Program, we use for short. This is a cooperative agreement with the Department of Energy, Fossil Energy, and Carbon Management. So this program seeks to educate the public, policymakers, industry, and stakeholders on CCUS and carbon management technologies, including tribal energy. We do this by hosting webinars, along with a series of monthly educational briefings, conference workshops, technical reports, and we release bi-monthly news clips on CCUS and carbon management related updates. This will include rare earth elements, critical minerals, blue hydrogen, environmental justice as it relates to carbon management, and tribal energy articles. So to join our mailing list, feel free to send me an email to the address at the bottom of your screen. The next one will be released on Wednesday, March 1st. At the end of our speaker presentations, feel free to use the raise your hand button or preferably the Q&A button to ask any questions. So parts of this webinar will be recorded and posted on our event page at a later date, but we do appreciate you taking the time to join us live. With that, may I introduce Mrs. Sheila Hollis, Acting Executive Director for the United States Energy Association.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and welcome to our remarkable speaker, Michelle. And Daniel, thank you for joining us as well. What is the USEA? Just briefly, it's a very unique organization. It's been around in one form or another over 100 years, but really took center stage really with the fall of the wall. We work all over the world with many countries, in South America, Central America, throughout Asia, Eastern Europe, Africa, and we've done that for a number of decades. We're working right now very intensively in the Eastern European arena. And in addition to doing all the work that we do with USAID and the State Department and the Department of Energy, we also do a number of programs like this, either in person or on screen, which are designed to educate, to introduce ideas, to have a dialogue, a forum for debate and thinking through some of the most complex, challenging issues of our time, whether it's CO2 related, or whether it's just basically finding energy for the world and continuing to provide a steady, secure source of energy in the United States and beyond. We're delighted to host Michelle and all of her backdrop and fascinating information and insights. And Daniel, thank you for joining us. Special thanks to Michelle and Michael Moore and Alex for their organizational skills and pulling this together, and also for their deep and abiding knowledge, which I call upon all the time. So with that, I turn it back to you, Michelle, and take it away.
Sure, Sheila, thank you very much. Daniel, it's all you.
Thanks, Sheila. Thanks, Michelle, and the team. I just wanted to welcome everybody to our fourth webinar in a series of 6 around this one obviously is around hydrogen and clean fuels of the future. And we want to thank Dr. Michelle Fox for agreeing to come and talk about the DOE and the Hydrogen Office and program and all of the good work that they are doing and then that they plan to do in the future. So we'll, my partner, Mr. CJ Stewart, will probably be joining. I just spoke with him, so he should be joining us momentarily. But when he does show up, we will introduce him probably between speakers. But I just wanted to thank you all for joining us. Also, we will have this webinar will be presented later for those of you who couldn't make it today. And so we will announce that and distribute the link when that's available. But again, thanks, Dr. Fox, for joining us, and I'll let you begin.
All right, this is my moment of stress. I have to share my slides, so bear with me. I will do my best. So, and let's see. There, and there, and there, and there. All right, does everyone, do you see that as full screen?
Yes, you're good to go.
Yes, we're good to go. Fantastic. All right, now to the fun part. I wanted to thank you all so much for putting this panel together and for providing me with the opportunity to speak to you today. I really appreciate the time you're investing here on something I find really fascinating. Daniel asked me to talk about the potential for hydrogen technologies, and I wanted to share a few high-level ideas and policy initiatives that are shaping what we do, and then offer some more specific thoughts on how tribes can engage with this versatile energy source in this truly historic moment. And I really look forward to some conversation after. So I'm hoping that this plants ideas and that we have a great follow-on conversation. My position helps provide direction for education and workforce efforts in the hydrogen program, and an integration of environmental justice and tribal and community engagement into the work we do. But my focus is really on the people who are integral to the deployment of clean energy technologies. And clean hydrogen is just one part of DOE's comprehensive energy strategy to enable a clean, secure, and equitable energy future for all Americans. And DOE's hydrogen program is working to help the country move as quickly as it can to mitigate climate change, but the rapid scale up really cannot come at a cost to communities, land, biodiversity, and health. So the administration has directed a new focus and an intense effort on energy equity and the environmental justice in order for us to rebuild our energy system in a way that is more just. So what role can hydrogen play? It is the most abundant element in the universe and is present in common substances like water and sugar and methane, but the challenge really is separating it. You've probably all seen this image before, but it's often referred to as the Swiss Army knife diagram, but I think it bears revisiting because hydrogen is just incredibly versatile, and it can be reproduced in myriad ways and used in an even greater number of ways. So on the left, you have the feedstocks, so fossil and other carbon-based feedstocks, and nuclear and renewables can all be used to create hydrogen fuel. And then on the right-hand side, you see some of the uses. So drilling down a little bit further into that, we have applications for it can extend to making fertilizer. It can be used in steel production, chemical production, aviation, transportation, and heating sectors. It can capture and store excess energy from renewables. It can be used to make electricity. It can power a car, a ship, or a data center. Rapid refueling makes it an ideal fuel for local delivery vehicles, and zero emissions make it an excellent choice for things like forklifts operating inside warehouses. The energy density of hydrogen reduces payload, and therefore it's a smart choice for long-haul heavy-duty trucks. And it can even be exported, which is a way that a lot of countries are starting to think about the applications there. And a little history, hydrogen power is not new. And admittedly, my knowledge is limited to Western European science, but there are documented experiments that show the separation of hydrogen was underway as early as the 1600s. And you may ask, if this is such a good idea, why aren't we already living in a hydrogen-powered world? And simply put, it's the cost. And under today's conditions, clean hydrogen is just too expensive to make. There's a lack of manufacturing at scale, and we've really faced that chicken and egg problem. We didn't have a great number of applications or a ready market, which would drive innovation. Without innovation to drive down the cost, there was no market. But things are changing rapidly. So In order for hydrogen to compete with incumbent technologies in terms of life cycle cost, performance, durability, and environmental impact, in 2021, DOE launched the first energy Earthshot, and as our molecular weight, we're very proud to be first. And so we are setting out to achieve a goal through a concerted and coordinated plan of action with this ambitious goal of what we call 111, $1 for 1 kilogram of clean hydrogen within 1 decade. Recognition of hydrogen's potential to fight climate change is growing, and there's just seems to be an unprecedented level of interest and innovation. There are now massive investments being made around the globe. China has already invested 16 billion. Germany is investing 10 billion. Britain is investing 16 billion, and there's a whopping 38 billion being invested in South Korea. But the United States is also, and here in the US, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act have contributed historic levels of funding and support in the form of tax credits and other incentives to promote the development of hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. So I'm sure you've all probably already heard about the $8 billion set aside for hydrogen hubs, but there's also another $1.5 billion for fuel cells and electrolyzers. And there are estimates out recently that put the value of the tax credits associated with the IRA at $100 billion. An analogy might be to think about the way the development of the personal computer changed our world. So computers that went from room-sized mainframes to something relatively affordable has changed so many facets of our world, and we are looking forward to a similar scenario for hydrogen technologies. So the investments we're making will support mass production and economies of scale, and we anticipate it will dramatically impact the price of hydrogen and enable widespread use. And with energy demand is surely going to continue growing, and we'll need to expand our research and entrepreneurial efforts to meet the expected demand. So how does this all work in practice? And I'm really hoping that this slide isn't boring for you, but it took me a while to sort of learn the alphabet soup of DOE, and I'm thinking if some people maybe don't work with us on a day-to-day basis, that it might be useful. But on the right-hand side of your screen, there's sort of the org chart that extracts just the hydrogen portion of DOE. And you can see that we're one part of a broad portfolio of activities. So there are multiple offices and the entire research, development, demonstration, and deployment value chain from production through to end use is represented. So there are all these offices involved. There's energy efficiency and renewable energy, fossil energy and carbon management, whom I know you are very familiar with, nuclear energy, the Office of Science, the Office of Electricity, and we all coordinate with the Advanced Research Program Agency for Energy, the Loan Program Office, the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, and the Office of Technology Transitions. And then there's underpinnings with the various labs, industry, universities, nonprofits, and state and local government. So our office, or the office that I'm with, represents, it's under EERE, and we are focused more on R&D for hydrogen and fuel cell technologies at the earlier stage of technology readiness. So I don't know if this makes things more complicated or less complicated, but I'm sharing really to sort of show the strategic portfolio and the list of programs and where they fit across that continuum of technology investment stages. And at each stage, there are sort of handoffs and feedback loops to help improve the processes. But you'll see here some of the big ticket items in the bipartisan infrastructure law with 815 and 816 that's coming out, all the way to the regional clean hydrogen hubs, which are further along in the deployment cycle. So another key resource that I would draw your attention to, if you haven't already, have it by your bedside. This is compelling reading. Just kidding. It's actually a fairly readable strategy for our national hydrogen program, and sets out sort of where we hope proposed actions are going to occur, on what timeline, and all the different end uses and markets that we're working on. So I'm happy to help you find that resource if you need any help navigating the DOE website. But our focus has really landed on the hard to decarbonize sectors and end uses where applications require large amounts of energy storage, for example, steel manufacturing. But there are really many other, I'll go back to that slide, many other promising industrial and chemical uses of hydrogen, including cement production, glass manufacturing, or industrial food processes that are emerging. And, we're talking about sort of, energies of the future, but ammonia might be another area worth considering. But one issue is the scale of production required. Hydrogen in the form of ammonia can also be used to export energy, but a fairly large facility would be needed. So just something to think about, and maybe Daniel, you'll pick up the conversation on ammonia. And so I wanted to provide some, real world examples because the options for using hydrogen are vast and somewhat difficult to get our arms around, or at least I find so. It's just so all encompassing. And I have a few pictures here to get your imagination working. And these are some real world examples of hydrogen in use. And as you can see, there's a great variety from backup power during storms to fueling stations to transportation. So if your tribe does not wish to become more industrialized with a new large installation, hydrogen provides options for stationary power that would provide electricity for remote or hard to reach communities. And another option to consider is a microgrid. Microgrids open locations for installations. They're independent sources of electricity and are designed to serve small communities or industries with reliable electricity. Both the electric demand and electric supply from renewables, can vary on scales ranging from a minute to months. And when the renewable electric systems generate more energy than a community needs, it can be used to power electrolyzers that convert water into hydrogen. And hydrogen can then be converted into electricity in a fuel cell when needed. So other backup systems such as battery storage and fuel power generators can be integrated into the mix, and then add a smart control system to ensure optimum performance. But it's a pretty powerful system. Fuel cells and electrolyzers also offer opportunities for grid sovereignty and delivering electricity to those off-grid. Distributed generation of energy and storage is inherently democratizing, and hydrogen is really meant to reduce the reliance on fossil fuels, and clean hydrogen offers opportunities to improve air quality while also making energy more accessible and affordable. Now, all these investments and strategies and road mapping efforts are being set against the backdrop of the Justice 40 movement. And as some of you may know, the administration has directed that 40% of the benefits of certain federal investments should be directed towards disadvantaged communities. And this new move towards equity has set off a cascade of initiatives, including increased tribal and community engagement, new funding mechanisms with lower barriers to entry, and goals to increase transparency so that communities can really assess the benefits and drawbacks of new energy systems. So in an effort to lower other barriers to participation, we've begun using different funding mechanisms such as prizes and challenges. And these are less burdensome and have less aggressive timelines and allow for community-led applications. So we'd welcome you to participate in some of those. We're also trying to work on sending out really far advanced notices of intent, so that new applicants can prepare to respond. We've also taken on expanding our pool of reviewers, and we are recruiting special purpose reviewers for a lot of the community benefits plans. And this has a knock-on effect of helping to involve new audiences and help new voices identify what they see as important and meaningful and share their perspectives with the technical reviewers. But it's also helpful for potential applicants to see what makes for a good proposal. We've created teaming lists in which interested entities can self-identify. And this again opens more opportunities for people who may not be ready to serve as a prime to really contribute and be part of a team and learn along the way. I wanted to draw your attention to this tool called the H2 Matchmaker. It was specifically launched for hubs, but we're thinking about broader applications for it. Each dot corresponds to a hydrogen activity that a stakeholder, that is broadly defined stakeholder, has contributed. And it works on a system of voluntary self-identification. At last check, only 2 tribal entities have chosen to register, and I really encourage you to think about doing that. While it's designed to help with regional planning by identifying producers and off-takers, a tool like this can be used to surface historically marginalized or underserved communities that want to participate. This tool, or one like it, can help drive greater diversity within the teams applying and open up pools of applicants. In order to have a fruitful dialogue, we need to help increase public awareness of hydrogen. We are in the process of creating graphically rich materials and FAQs in multiple formats, languages, and platforms. As part of this effort, we need to address the negative feedback from stakeholders, for example, non-renewable hydrogen, siting, NOx emissions, etc. And we've been working on providing candid answers to questions that have come up over the course of listening sessions. This set of documents will help address common concerns about hydrogen and frequently asked questions. These efforts to increase public awareness of energy literacy are a first step towards our goal of moving from merely informing to consulting and fully engaging with communities. It's important for communities to be able to identify the real benefits and real risks or potential risks from DOE-funded projects. And we've begun in an earnest effort to listen and engage with marginalized and disadvantaged communities and tribes. Although it's got to be balanced because we're often reminded of how overburdened many of these communities are. We will continue to work in a more organized way to create that continuum from equity and research design all the way to co-creation. And we want to partner along the way from the planning process all the way through decision-making and into implementation. We recognize we really don't have all the answers, and we both respect and want to hear from people who understand their location and how to work with their environment. Additional challenges still remain. Cost share requirements exacerbate inequality. I hear you loud and clear on that. Funding opportunities are still a huge process that has not been streamlined, and they're really a very heavy lift for anyone, but especially smaller entities and tribes. This is very new territory, and we are still learning. But I don't just want to talk about the technology. It's really also about the people. And we're going to need to stand up a robust workforce for the implementation of a clean hydrogen ecosystem. We can learn a lot from new energy technology areas such as solar and batteries, but we have to do it in a faster way, and the workforce will need to be more adaptable for many possible future scenarios. It's a huge opportunity space, but with a really short runway. We're working on a complex analysis of what these jobs look like, regional variations, job classifications, career pathways, developing recognized credentials, roles for government, national labs, industry, labor unions, and educational institutions. And so what are some possible jobs in hydrogen? I mean, they really range from marketing and safety officers to virtual control panel operators, jobs in manufacturing, energy system designers, power electronic engineers, and retrofit designers. So it's an incredibly vast number and differentiation of careers that are there as an opportunity. We're working to raise awareness around careers in clean hydrogen, and we're exploring new recruitment strategies that will reach non-traditional applicants to build a workforce that reflects the specific communities in which deployments happen. But our goal is not just to attract and grow the workforce, but also to improve the quality of the energy jobs. So our funding opportunities have provisions for each award to invest in the development of the workforce. There are a lot of incentives and programs in development to encourage the creation of quality jobs. For example, the development of pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs will really help meet social equity goals. We are working to develop stackable credentials that allow for multiple entry points and novel approaches such as micro-credentialing, virtual reality training, and performance-based assessment. We're also looking to develop opportunities for our existing workforce. We have plans to develop training and retraining opportunities, particularly for the workforce transitioning from fossil fuel industries. Many workers in fossil fuel industries possess skills and are in geographies that are suitable for transferring to hydrogen technologies. But I'd love to learn how to make these workforce efforts as accessible and relevant as possible for tribes and tribal organizations. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I've covered a lot of ground, and I hear you saying, great, sign me up. How do I take part? So you can indicate your interest on the H2 Matchmaker tool that I mentioned earlier. You could sign up on the teaming lists that accompany most funding opportunities. You can sign up for a newsletter, attend our monthly H2IQ hours, watch for prizes that have lower barriers for entry and reduced or low cost share requirements. We're also asking for people to become external reviewers or special purpose reviewers. And that really can help shape the process. And it's also, I think, as I mentioned, instructive for learning about what makes a good application and how the review process works. There's also technical assistance and funding available at several agencies across the national labs. And many of us are standing by to offer assistance in strategic energy planning and regional analysis, proposal development, and there's access to technical experts. So with that, I'll leave you with a screenshot that represents some of the milestones that are coming up for our program and our office. The Hydrogen Hub steals so much of the limelight, but there's a lot more going on. I wanted to draw your attention to a notice of intent that has been released for a new large funding opportunity, approximately $750 million, that focuses on fuel cells and electrolyzer technologies. And there's specific language in the legislation that encourages applicants to, quote, operate in partnership with tribal energy development organizations, Indian tribes, tribal organizations, Native Hawaiian community-based organizations, or territories, or freely associated states, or are located in economically distressed areas of the major natural gas producing regions of the United States. So indicating interest through the H2 Matchmaker or a teaming list may help applicants reach out for partnering on applications. I also plan to be at RES as part of the Federal Pavilion, so if you're there, please come by and say hello. And you may want to consider attending our annual merit review for the whole DOE hydrogen program that's scheduled the week of June 5th in Washington, D.C., and I think registration's opening very soon. So finally, I've talked an awful lot, and I'd really like to make this a dialogue. We need to rapidly scale up hydrogen and fuel cell technologies to get the benefits of both clean energy and the jobs. And it's a call for all hands on deck to meet our carbon reduction goals. And your ideas will really help make our research, development, and deployment efforts inclusive to meet your needs while also increasing resilience and sustainability. So the next industrial revolution is underway, and let's make it sustainable and designed in greater harmony with nature. Please get in touch if you'd like to share your thoughts and perspective about what's worked and what you're thinking about. And I thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you very much. Daniel, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Michelle, Dr. Fox, for your great presentation. We've got some questions, but I'd like to make some comments first and then start the dialogue, and we can get to those in a bit. Like Sheila had mentioned at the beginning of our talk, is that the whole purpose of these webinars is to start a dialogue between a wide variety of folks, government, obviously the DOE, and all the stakeholders like tribes, our tribal communities, and the private sector who potentially will work to develop projects within Indian country in conjunction with tribes, our communities, tribal member entrepreneurs and their businesses throughout the U.S. And so that's what it's meant to be, as a dialogue. Usually I don't speak as much, as was mentioned. Mr. Michael Hopkins, who was a speaker, wasn't able to attend due to a family emergency. And so I thought that I would spend a little bit more time expanding on some of the points that Dr. Fox had mentioned, but also some other points. And so my partner, CJ Stewart, has joined us, and our team, we wear a couple hats. One of the hats that we wear is both of us are co-founders and directors of the National Tribal Energy Association. And I only mention that, I usually don't mention that during our talks here, because our association that we've developed represents the 4 largest tribes, energy producing tribes, as well as their tribal communities, which are the Navajo Nation in the Southwest, the Southern Ute tribe in Colorado, the Crow Nation, which CJ is a member of in Montana, and the MHA Nation in the Bakken in North Dakota, which is the largest oil producing tribe. Crow is the largest coal producing tribe, and the Southern Ute is the largest natural gas producing tribe. And so, although the reason I mention that, and although these tribes are known for their fossil energy, we try to talk about an all of the above energy approach to Indian country. And so the reality is Indian country produces all of the sources of energy that we have in this nation, from all the renewables. I mean, every kind, not all the renewables, but in Indian country, we produce hydropower, we produce biomass, we produce wind and solar, geothermal, large hydro, small hydro. And so basically all the sources of all the kinds of energy that we produce in this country exists in Indian country. So that's what I was trying to say. One thing I did want to mention before we moved on was, as Dr. Fox mentioned, workforce development is very important to I call it the clean energy, the energy evolution. We talk about the clean energy transition as an energy transition from one energy to another. I talk about an energy evolution, that the uses of energy are evolving. We're not necessarily going to move away from one or another. We may for different things, but all energies, that's why I talk about all the above energies are really important, especially in Indian country. So an energy evolution. Within this energy evolution, workforce development is important, as we need to uptrain and train, retrain, and newly train our workforces, or all Americans, but specifically of Native Americans. So within that, I also wanted to talk about the fact that not only should we be considered as workers for the new technologies and the new energy production, we also should be looked at as potential owners, potential developers of projects, potential operators of those projects once they're developed, or even the constructors of those projects. Obviously, we can also supply the fuel for those projects, as well as be the workers, as well as for our community members and neighbors and family to be members of the workforce. Another thing that's not really mentioned a lot is we can also, our native people can also be scientists, and we need to develop workforce development around STEM and the sciences more, because the future, it's not just hydrogen and ammonia and methanol and other clean fuels that we have today. It's the clean fuels of the future that haven't even been discovered yet, that our native students and our native scientists can be helpful in developing and inventing those things. So in the long run, intellectual property, the IP around clean energy technologies is going to be important. The patents that are discovered and that are applied also bring revenue and wealth and income. And so those are some of the things that I also wanted to mention, is that when we talk about Indian country and the hydrogen economy of the future, workforce development is important, and is going to be one of the pillars of our new economy. But also, I think looking at the diversity of types of areas within the hydrogen economy also need to be talked about from A to Z. One I just also wanted to mention really quick before I make my main points is that specifically to the DOE, hopefully as because we as tribal people, we know this, but the DOE and other government agencies, state agencies and governments as well as the private sector. The fact is that Indian country is a very diverse place. There's 574 federally recognized tribes that are very diverse. Their languages, culture, history, traditions are very diverse, from Alaska all the way down to Florida and everywhere in between. I mean, and so what that means is that a one size fits all approach is not going to work. I mean, we've seen that in the past with government. And so for DOE and for folks like Dr. Fox to think about when they're creating programs, when they're creating information, education, curriculum, when they're creating other tools, they have to figure out how to do that in a way that will reach all 574 recognized tribes, as well as the 4 million Native Americans that are separate from their tribes. Because tribes are governments, but there are 4 million Americans who are Native Americans who claim Native American enrollment or ancestry out there as of the last census, and 70% of those people live in urban areas, and so which means that 70% of the population of Native Americans don't live on reservation; they live in the cities, and so. How do you not only reach out to the tribes, which are mostly rural? How do you also reach out to the tribal members who are overwhelmingly urban? So I think that's something that just to point out to DOE to think about, not to forget. And as we move forward, groups like our National Tribal Energy Association are willing to help support the DOE in getting that message out to Indian country, and the opposite side of that coin is we need an all the above strategy for technical assistance to Indian country, which is technical assistance to the tribes, technical assistance to tribal communities and their members, in and around not only understanding what is hydrogen, like a hydrogen 101, but what are the clean fuels? How does that impact our lives? You know, all the above. Just in general, like I said, because there's 574 tribes, each of them may be at different stages of knowledge and of education and capacity. And so the same with capacity building for our tribes, and in order to, like Dr. Fox mentioned, all the funds, all the resources that are available because of the infrastructure bill and because of the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, that just came out. More than this is unprecedented in our history of a nation, the amount of resources that are geared towards clean energy and energy evolution. And so it's going to take an all the above approach to technical assistance and all the above approach to capacity building as well. And so and like I said earlier, one size doesn't fit all. So not only do we have to have an all the above approach to technical assistance, capacity building, a one size fit all doesn't work as well for that outreach, for that technical assistance and that capacity building. So I just wanted to say that, and then I'll be quick with the rest of my comments. Is as I started out with, Indian countries and all the above energy producer. So when we talk about hydrogen in particular, there's a lot of different ways you can make hydrogen from fossil fuels. You can make it from biomass. You can make it from water. There's all kinds of different chemistry that goes on that I'm not an expert on, but I know that there's a variety of ways to create hydrogen. And so we need to look at Indian country as a supplier of a variety of fuels for hydrogen. And so I know there's a debate going on about all the rainbow of color of fuels that hydrogen that exist out there that have been created to differentiate the different products out there. Different developers, different folks are talking about, brown and black hydrogen, all the way up to green and blue, and even clear hydrogen. And so there's a lot of things. I think that we get that discussion sort of gets us away from talking about hydrogen. And so I just wanted to make that clear, is that Indian country can be a source of all sorts of fuels for hydrogen, especially since a lot of us want to get to green hydrogen, but me personally, I don't think that we're going to have a green hydrogen solution until after 2050. So in the meantime, there's a lot of ways to get to our goal. Second, as I mentioned, tribes can be not only suppliers of fuel for hydrogen. Tribes should be looked at directly as producers of hydrogen, owners of projects, hydrogen producing projects of all varieties and kinds. And so we can also be looked at as, to help construct those projects, and the infrastructure that's needed, that Dr. Fox had mentioned. I did make a note about that. Is there's a debate right now, again, there's a lot of debates around hydrogen, but one of the main debates is about how do we build out this hydrogen infrastructure. There's a lot of folks that want to replace the natural gas infrastructure with hydrogen. They think that it's as easy as just getting rid of hot natural gas, and using the pipelines that are left over for hydrogen. There's a lot of chemistry involved. Hydrogen is a little bit lighter than natural gas, so you have some issues there. But it's not that easy. So I think what's ultimately going to happen is where infrastructure can be built out, or where infrastructure can be traded out between natural gas and oil and hydrogen, it will. But for the most part, we're probably going to need much more pipelines than we have to move hydrogen. So that's a whole nother subject around permitting and siting and financing. But the whole point the whole point that I'm trying to make is look at us for being infrastructure owners as well. Probably a lot of people don't know, but Indian country can operate outside of Indian country. So tribes can own and operate businesses. Tribal members can have their own businesses that can operate on reservation, but they can also operate off reservation. And since the majority of projects are going to be off reservation, we shouldn't be limited just to on reservation. I get a lot of developers, a lot of financiers, a lot of folks that talk to me and contact me, and they're just looking for on reservation projects. They don't think that a tribe can do a project in Texas or in Virginia or Florida, or other places where there are seemingly no tribes. But I try to steer them away from that thought, and correct them to say that tribes can operate anywhere, and we should look at them for operations in other places. And so another thing that is an issue in Indian country just in general is capital, access to capital, and we have this problem with hydrogen as well, because there's 574 tribes. Each of them has different varying levels of income and wealth. Some are very wealthy because of natural resources, or because of their lands, or because of gaming, hospitality, and industry, and some are not. And just like everywhere else in our country, we're varied wealth and income wise. And so, but we have problems with attracting capital, and so we need that early very critical, but very risky development capital. We need access to it, and we need developers who understand that and who are willing to supply that capital, partners, to do projects in the country. Because as far as I know, I haven't heard of a project yet that has been announced by Exxon or by some of the other majors like Shell or Occidental, or anybody in Indian country. They're all trying to build on the Gulf Coast or California or on the East Coast, and I'm hoping that they'll look at Indian country earlier than usual. Hopefully, we're not the last in the cycle for them to look at. Hopefully, some of the IRA incentives will get them to look at Indian country a lot more quicker than they normally do in the whole investment cycle. Some of the key milestones that I think are going to be important as we move forward, and Dr. Fox had mentioned one of them, is the DOE hydrogen hub competition that was created because of the infrastructure bill. And I think the deadline's coming up in April. A bunch of regions, a bunch of different, I think 30 or more consortiums have been created between state governments, private sector, corporations, national labs, nonprofits. A bunch of different folks are applying for up to $8 billion for at least 4 of those hubs. 4 to 8, I think, will be chosen, and it'll be interesting to see how tribes are partnering in those hubs, in those applications, or not. We don't know yet. I know of a couple that are participating in several of the hub applications, but I don't think that's the case generally across the nation, whether it's a uniform thing. So that'd be interesting to see how they play in that, but also how they play outside of the Justice 40 initiative, because as Dr. Fox mentioned, that's one of the key initiatives of the administration, is how to, and Justice 40 is a minimum. It's 40% of the impact of the benefit of certain federal programs and those dollars. But Justice 40 is not a max, it's a minimum. And so projects can spend more than 40% of their or have an impact that's greater than 40% of those dollars if they want, if they choose to, and I'm hoping that they do. And so that would be interesting to see. But there's some other things that are coming up right now that have been issued this past week or two. There's some transmission studies that have been some planning studies, or there's some work that are around a national transmission study as well as an offshore transmission study. And a lot of the PR that has so far come out from the DOE about that don't mention tribes. So I'm hoping that that's going to be different in the national hydrogen study that I haven't read it, so I'll take a look at it this week, that Dr. Fox mentioned. And then lastly, the last thing I wanted to mention was our last webinar, the one we had before, was talking about critical minerals. And you don't really hear much about critical minerals when you talk about hydrogen. But I do know, like I said, just from my understanding, is that you need at least one of the critical minerals, platinum, to make hydrogen between through the electrolysis, I believe, as a catalyst, to be it's the most efficient right now of the catalysts so far is platinum. And that's a rare, I mean, it's not rare, but it is expensive, and it's something that that's going to be important as we move forward. I just read that the World Bank just came out with a study or report in December of 2022, just a couple of months ago, regarding hydrogen and critical minerals. And so they're taking a look at what critical minerals are going to be needed in the production of hydrogen. We really talk about critical minerals when we talk about electric vehicles and batteries and solar and wind turbines and solar panels and the cell phones and all our technology. That's where we really talk about critical minerals. But I think we need to look at hydrogen and critical minerals, because one of the things that mentioned during our last webinar was the fact that in the United States, between 70 and 95% of the critical minerals that exist either on our Indian reservation or within 35 miles of the reservation. And so critical minerals are going to be key in the energy evolution that we're participating in. They're going to be key in the hydrogen economy that's coming. And so, which means that not only the DOE, the other agencies of the federal government and departments, as well as the feds and the private sector and tribes, we all need to start having these conversations around critical minerals in Indian country. And so that means that we need to have the conversation between critical minerals, hydrogen in Indian country as well. So with that, I'll stop and I'll open it up to CJ, my partner on these webinars, to see if he has any thoughts or if he wanted to chime in on anything that I've said or that Dr. Fox had said.
First of all, I just wanted to say thank you, Daniel, and Dr. Fox. Appreciate your presentation. You know, I was looking back at this, and I was thinking, you know, when they first come out with the Hydrogen Shot Summit, I was the first tribal member to participate on that, and I really thought we were going to go someplace with it. You know, I really thought there was some support there for tribes, and you know, the panel before us was like, you know, Secretary Kerry, and I believe Bill Gates, and Senator Manchin, and Secretary Granholm, and just to name a few, they were on the panel. And I really thought it was, you know, I was excited about the hydrogen piece because, you know, we in the Crow tribe, you know, we not only do we have a array of natural resources, whether it's renewable or fossil, we have resources here that are in abundance, and we were looking for ways to develop our resources and still look at trying to meet those clean energy standards that are out there. And when we were on this, when I was on this panel, I was working with Miss Sunita. I can't say her last name, Satin some, but nevertheless, we had discussions about this hydrogen shot summit, and but after that, we just nothing ever happened. And it was kind of disappointing because I really believed that, you know, they were going to take a good stab at working with the tribes, being that, you know, a lot of the resources that they're trying to achieve are on or near Indian country, and you know, it kind of felt like they were getting serious about working with Indian country. Unfortunately, it wasn't the case, and I still haven't heard nothing. You know, just like Daniel had stated, you know, we threw that around. Daniel and I were like thinking, why can't we start thinking about, you know, doing, you know, tribal hydrogen hubs? Why can't we think about those? You know, has anybody thought about it? You know, nobody's thinking like that. And, you know, getting the tribes involved. And I seen one of the questions on the Q&A here. I believe it was to Dr. Fox there. And it stated something about, you know, there was a small developer working with some tribes, but it always dies at council. And so this entrepreneur or developer that's trying to work the hydrogen piece was asking questions about what other tribes are willing to work with. See, that's the thing. It's like a lot of the tribes don't want to be the first one out the gate. And we were willing to come out first out of the gate, being, participants in the first hydrogen shot summit. And it didn't go nowhere. So I kind of think and believe that if it became a collective, effort moving forward with other tribes, and I believe that, I think with more of a voice towards wanting to develop, whether it's hydrogen hubs or just hydrogen in general, or infrastructure, just being a part of this, there's a lot of opportunity, whether it's, with the pipelines, infrastructure, roads need to be built, jobs, training, and, it's a great opportunity. And I think the tribes need to start thinking about being part of this, I mean, it's going to come down to it. 90 to 95% of all the critical and rare earth minerals are on Indian country land. And so we can't get around it. And so I guess I'm just echoing what we already know. And I believe that some are finding out now. And we can't go down that same path where we leave Indian country out and then we end up fighting Indian country to try to develop. You had the Dakota Access Pipeline. I mean, that pipeline there was gonna, is and was, transporting, trust oil from a lot of tribal members. And there was a lot of standing there had they known what to do legally. But nevertheless, looking forward, I think we can, trying to be more, positive about this. I think we need to start thinking about, creating pathways for Indian country. I know there's a lot of money out there, and people think that money solves all the problems, but sometimes it causes problems because, we got to remember, there's a lot of money that was moved around during this, the CARES Act, and money came to the tribes, but at the same time, the goalpost was being changed every week. And 1 week it was, you had expenses that were approved of, and then later on, those expenses weren't approved of. So as you're moving forward, audits for Indian country were not being, met. And just for a simple fact that the goalpost was being moved all the time. And so it just put tribes in a position where they had a lot of disallowable costs. And it puts the tribe in a position where they can't go after any of this funding, and kind of closes the tribes out. So I think we need to take that into consideration. But nevertheless, I believe that, I like the presentation. I know there's opportunities and training, academia. I know Daniel has been really involved with the STEM program. I really believe in that. I really believe that, we get a buy-in on the academia side, and not just with the universities and colleges. I think we can start looking at the tribal colleges. The tribes are willing and waiting to do something. But again, like I said, they don't want to be the first one out the gate. And I think in order to curb that or solve that problem, that potential problem, I think it could be I think we can collectively bring the tribes together that are willing and wanting to put this together, and get them involved without any it's just, tribes don't want to make a wrong move. They don't want to make a wrong move because we do have to deal with the paternalism of the US government when it concerns the tribes. And a lot of times when, we make the wrong move, we don't get a second chance. And so I think we need to take a lot of those areas into consideration when it comes to tribes, moving forward, the relationships that they have. And at the same time, you're dealing with, the elections and other areas like that, where, something that could be very important to us and the rest of the world don't mean nothing, because, some tribes want to move forward with other things. And so I think we need to start, and this is a good start. The Hydrogen Shot Summit was a good start. And like I was talking with Sunita, I was saying, why don't we press for a tribal hydrogen shot summit if that's going to be, if that could help out. Let's look at some areas there where we concentrate on tribes. I know there was another group from the Midwest or the Northwest, couple of tribes, Oregon, and one other tribe, I believe. But at the same time, that there was like three tribes at the end of the Hydrogen Shot Summit that was involved. I believe we were the only ones that owned coal and were part of a large land base. And so, I looked at the hydrogen piece as a good opportunity for the Crow tribe to continue to utilize our resources, but at the same time be innovative and create opportunities and ways to eliminate our carbon footprint. And so I thought this hydrogen shot summit, and I thought the hydrogen piece was a really good opportunity, and I still do. And I really think that we can really build on this and move forward. So with that, I'm just going to turn it back over to Daniel. I just want to thank you, Dr. Fox, and just want to say my piece on this, and hopefully we can move forward again.
Well, thanks a lot, CJ, for your words. I think they're really important. And one of the things I wanted to reiterate again is that, as I mentioned, Indian countries open for business, but we have to look at it as a all the above energy approach, because like CJ mentioned, he's from the Crow tribe, and I didn't really go a lot into this because he can speak for them because he's the energy director of Crow, but I'll speak for them if I may. And some of the other fossil energy tribes is that when we talk about hydrogen, everybody wants to focus on green hydrogen, which means that we can't talk about fossil energy tribes and their resources in the production of hydrogen, because you can gasify coal, and with carbon capture, utilization and storage, you can create hydrogen that is just as clean as any hydrogen that exists out in the world now. You can do the same. Obviously, 58 or 60% of the hydrogen that's created right now in the world comes from oil refineries. And so obviously the MH8 nation is the largest. They produce 20% of the production of the Bakken. And tribes like the Southern Ute, who also have oil, but mostly natural gas. There's a lot of tribes in Oklahoma who produce oil, in Wyoming, Montana, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico, who produce oil. And so, their commodity can also produce hydrogen. Again, natural gas, Southern Ute, the flared gas in the Bakken, coal bed methane at Crow, coal bed methane in the Powder River Basin in Wyoming, in Utah, also at Southern Ute and Ute Mountain in Colorado, in northern New Mexico. And so these products can also be developed and used to make hydrogen. And so, but we're not part of that conversation because everybody wants to focus on green hydrogen, I think, which is important in the future. But right now, if if the hydrogen economy is going to happen, there has to be an interim way of making hydrogen, and it's going to come from fossil energy with carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And I think that because the Fossil Energy and Carbon Management Office of DOE, that's the area, and they're already aware of that, obviously. But the rest of the industry, the developers, academics, government, media, we also need to focus on that as well. Is that in order for Indian country to participate in the hydrogen economy, in order for us to develop our workforce, develop projects, gain a little wealth, an income, and help bring us out of poverty, which poverty exists in most places in any country, we need to develop hydrogen. We need to develop our resources with carbon capture. And so I just wanted to say that Indian country is open for business. Like CJ said, his tribe would be a prime example of a potential, because they have the largest coal. They own the largest coal resources in the country of any private landowner outside of the federal government. And so, which probably means they're probably the largest outside of the U.S. federal government. They're probably the largest owners of coal in the world, if it was his own company. And so, it would be a shame if that tribe wasn't able to develop its resources to provide clean hydrogen for fuel for the rest of the country and for the world. So I just wanted to say that. And so maybe Michelle Littlefield, if we could get to some of the questions that were posed to Dr. Fox, we could do that next.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have one here from Ben Stewart. Good to see you again. Which metrics are used to determine how clean hydrogen generation and utilization are? What are they?
Yeah, I have colleagues who spend all day on that, and they know better because there are a lot of moving pieces in that. So what I would encourage is for the asker to email me, and I'll put them in touch so that you can get a good technical answer as opposed to my waffle. I'm sorry, I'm just admitting the limits of my knowledge.
Not a problem at all. When you have a moment in the chat to everyone, would you mind adding your email address for us so we can contact you? Thank you so much. So we have another one here from Sandra Safro. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. You mentioned a set of documents with answers to common questions. Is that currently available? And if so, where can we find it?
It is still in review, and we would love to have people comment on it before we release it, but we hope to continue to gather feedback after it's announced. Like, it'll be a living document. So as new questions come up, we will add to that. So again, I'll put my email in the chat if you want to be an early reviewer. Otherwise, my suggestion is to sign up for our announcements, and it'll go out as a program announcement when it becomes available. So I thank you very much for your interest. It's good to know that at least some people want to read it. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you. In your presentation, I did notice that there was a little button that was not hidden for you, but we could see it. And unfortunately, it was covering part of the updates link. If you could possibly put that in the chat as well, that would be very helpful. But thank you very much. So we have another question.
No, I just want to apologize. I saw a couple of people say that, and it didn't appear on my screen. So I am so sorry for the visual disruption, and I'm happy to share my slides too. So I'll just put my email in the inbox, and then please, anyone who wants to get in touch, please do.
Zoom means never having to say you're sorry.
Thank you.
It's always thank you for noticing, right? So another question from Samir Sindeshpandi. How do you apply to be a reviewer for such projects?
There is a link that should be live on our site. But again, if you want to email me, I'll make sure you find it. We've set up the whole process, and I wanted to say I'm excited that people are looking at being special purpose reviewers. It is paid, and so we would love to, encourage all of you to sign up, because as I say, it's a really great way to sort of learn, about how to do applications so that you guys can be prime on the next round of funding.
All right, thank you. So another question from Ben Stewart. Have you done any comparative analysis of the efficiency of capital and resources allocation for large-scale hydrogen applications and small-scale hydrogen applications?
Way beyond my expertise, sorry. Email me and I'll try to find someone to answer your question.
Okay, sounds good. Question here from Leroy Shingoitiwa. How do we get tribes to share information on projects? Sharing of information seems to be the biggest obstacle we face when we want to know more. Rather than tribalism concept, maybe we teach each other to share so we can complete and compete for projects such as hydrogen. So I think that's more of a question for everyone, and possibly more of an opinion, but something that we can address here.
I can answer that, or at least give an idea. Like I said, through the Fossil Energy and Carbon Management Office, through USDA, we are having that conversation with the Assistant Secretary Brad Crabtree and his team, who work directly and in close concert with the team here, Michael and Sheila and Alex and Michelle here from USDA. And so that's something that we are working on right now when it comes to tribes and tribes working together and sharing information. So we're hoping that, we're having a meeting in the next several weeks to talk about that as one of the issues, and so hopefully we can have an answer later. But that's just a broad answer. But Leroy is right, is that a lot of tribes we compete. There's 574 tribes, 4 million of us, and we're very competitive. And so we like to keep a lot of information to ourselves. But because hydrogen is so big, and it's such a large issue, that's a national and a worldwide issue around decarbonization and like CJ mentioned, lowering our carbon footprint. We do have to come together. So I'm hoping, I've been hoping for a long time, but I do see a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm hoping that we'll have an answer for that soon. That will benefit all of Indian country, all the tribes, and the nation. So I just wanted to say that.
I like to answer a little bit on that, Michelle, real quick. And with what we do, with the tribe, we work through the Department of Economic and Mineral Development, and they do a lot of our technical assistance, and they do a lot of our vetting. And so when we do an NDA or an LOI with a certain group or developing group, a lot of times we'll do an NDA, and they'll go over there and they'll get information because they hold our information over there at the Department of Economic and Mineral Development in Lakewood, right there in Denver, Colorado. So giving them props, because they're doing a huge job, and they cover a lot of ground and do a lot of technical assistance for the tribes without any delay or and it's all funded by the U.S. government, and it really helps, both the developer and the tribal folks, so then that way, with the tribes, we end up dealing with fly-by-nights. We get folks coming in, they're like, oh, we gotta get this done. We gotta do it like this. We need exclusivity over the whole reservation, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, we move at our speed. And so, and that's kind of a turnoff, you know, when we get developers coming in and they just want to just ramrod what their interests without ever taking a look at the cultural aspect. You know, we just came out of a pandemic. You know, we lost about, you know, 65% of our elders, our Crow-speaking elders, and, you know, they hold all our songs and culture. And so, you know, we prioritized our vaccinations to our elders so we wouldn't lose our culture. And that's something that the rest of the world don't even think about, because, you know, everybody's mixed. And so with tribes, you know, there's only 14,000 crows left on God's green earth. And all we're trying to do is put food on our table. And, you know, when they talk about, you know, endangered species, you know, the Indian people are endangered species. And we're, you know, we're a lot more important than some microorganisms. And so, you know, we like to be treated with the same respect. Going back to the issue on some of the area for the supply chain, you know, we got about 28 years till we get to 2050 before they state that green hydrogen is going to be competitive in the market and affordable. So with that being said, I mean, in the meantime, currently, you know, the supply chain is controlled by, you know, fossil fuels with the hydrogen developments. And so it will be for another 28 years. And we got to think about, you know, I know we got pie in the sky, you know, goals, and we all work together, we can get there. But at the same time, you know, we got to understand the supply chain right now is run on fossil fuels, and we can't deny our fossil fuel tribes. And so we need to get them involved, and we need to get them, you know, brought together and up to speed on a lot of these areas and prioritized, because like I said, 90 to 95% of all of these areas, for whether it be for your solar or your wind, you know, we got to build these batteries, and it's going to take a lot of mining. And I can't state it enough. So I just want to, you know, bring that attention there, that, you know, we go through a process that protects our tribal people and members, and from, you know, some of the folks that just want to come in and make a quick buck, sell their company, and then sell on to the majors. And that's not who we are. We believe in relationships. We believe in long-term relationships with our tribes, because we don't feel like we're going to leave. You know, we're going to be here as long as we can. And so we don't want to deal with folks that just want to make a quick buck off of us and then just bounce. So with that being said, I just, you know, I thought I wanted to kind of add that in there, just to give you a perspective of, you know, of what an energy tribe goes through when it comes to, you know, data. And then it all depends on what kind of data. I mean, aggregate data is okay, you know, personal data. I think a lot of the tribes will not produce that without NDAs and without making sure that proper vetting has occurred. So with that being said, I just, you know, thought I'd bring that as a point. Thank you.
I'll say, even from a communication standpoint, you know, any of this information, if you really want it accessible to everyone, it's one of the trickiest things. You know, do you have it like on one page for one website for everyone to visit, or do you have places where people can go? It's very tricky to make sure that everyone has the same opportunities to work on these projects. It's extremely complicated. But thank you all very much for your input. So we do have one more question from Ben Stewart. He says, if the tribes are thinking long-term sustainability and investments, the key considerations are water requirements and the potential of associated and parallel production of strategic minerals. If anyone would like to comment on that.
No, we agree. I think that's more of a comment than a question, but we agree. Those are all important. And so that's why we're having this dialogue. We're hoping that that this dialogue is just to start. This is why we're here today for this webinar with in conjunction with the USDA and the DOE. Hopefully that starts a snowball basically rolling. Hopefully there'll be future webinars that we can produce that will go into more detail around hydrogen. That's sort of my goal. More specifics. Some of the questions have been very good around some of the issues with the negative maybe impacts of hydrogen, and some of the community impacts and the benefits as well. And so I'm hoping that we can have those conversations down the line. But this is a good start. And then I also wanted to mention one thing. There was another question that I answered on the chat from Ryan in regards to basically the NEPA. A lot of the opponents to a lot of these projects, whether they pipelines, transmission, our environmental groups, NGOs, and our NEPA process is flawed because it's an antagonistic process. Us versus them. And so I'm actually working with a group of academics from Boise State University. We put in a proposal for a FOIA, DOE FOIA that just closed a couple of weeks ago, that looks at creating a community consent-based process for siting and permitting of projects, particularly around nuclear. That was the FOIA, but really my goal is to create a community consent-based siting and permitting process for all projects that looks at community consent rather than us versus them, a developer versus the feds, or a developer versus a community. It's sort of something that we can all get behind, and that's going to be have a public benefit. And so that I just wanted to mention that I answered his question in the chat, and so I wanted to also mention that, like Dr. Fox had mentioned, maybe Michelle Littlefield, if she had asked if we could put her email out. I don't know how to do it, because I'm wanting to write a question myself, but I can't. But if there's a way on somewhere to post her email so that the people can ask her questions directly, but also we've also had this policy as well, is that if any of the people in the audience or people that will be watching this later down the line have any questions, please email us, and then we'll be able to get those questions back. We have a way to figure out who's participated and have their contact information. We can email everybody some answers to some of the questions that we can't answer today. So I just wanted to let you guys know that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually do have Michelle Fox's email here. I have it as Michelle, MICHELLE .Fox, FOX @ee.doe.gov. Also put on the webpage along with a link. It's kind of a long-winded link, but it's from energy.gov/EERE. And if you look up interested in becoming a hydrogen and fuel cells project reviewer, you can find that information there. This will also be on the webpage on the website usda.org. You go to events, you'll see that one in past events, and that information will be there for you.
Michelle, can you put that up on the USDA website as well? In case people had to get off or something.
Yeah, sure. Can actually do that right now.
And thanks for doing that. I could only post to the panel, so I'm grateful that you shared my email, and I look forward to hearing from you. I already have a request from Brandy James for slides, so they'll be on their way as soon as we conclude today. But I can't thank you enough for the opportunity and to try to really start, what CJ mentioned, he had hoped had started a long time ago. We're just a little short-staffed, but the desire is there to actually see that vision happen. So we're going to take that back, and I appreciate all the other really profound insights, experiences that you shared, and I want to thank you. It'll help make our program better.
Thank you.
Hey, Daniel and CJ, quick question for you. If somebody wanted to come and do like an assessment with a tribe and the opportunity for say the resources that were there, are there like entities at Bureau of Indian Affairs or at the DOE that can help support some kind of a feasibility study or a resource overview? You know, it costs a little bit of money, but not a lot, but it makes a big difference to be able to determine compatibility. Is there some steps there that could be taken?
CJ can answer this as well, but I'll just chime in first. As CJ mentioned, under the Bureau of Indian Affairs, there's the Division of Energy and Mineral Development that he mentioned that's based in Denver, that helps tribes put assessments and other business plans and other things together. Just for information, there have been 2 major resource assessment that have been done for a handful of tribes in the 1970s and then in the 1990s. The 1970s version was done with the BIA and the U.S. Geological Survey, and then the one in the 90s was done within BIA as well. And so, but those are over 30 years old, and so nobody from the federal government has done in a huge way a resource assessment, mineral assessment, or energy assessment for tribes. And so that's something that we have mentioned to DOE. So hopefully, they can throw some money into a pot. But USGS and BIA were the last ones to do that. But I would defer to CJ with his connection and work with directly with the Division of Energy and Mineral Development at BIA.
All right. I just want to, touch base on that point there. That, I with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Department of Economic and Mineral Development is usually under the Deputy Assistant Secretary, but at this point now it's under the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and so they would be a good resource, to work on those areas, because they have all their specialists there, engineers, hydrologists, all the way through to capital investments, and helping tribes with Section 17s. Everything from that point to whatever may be the case, the tribe or the DEMD would be helping and assisting the tribe to move in those areas. As far as the Department of Energy is concerned, I'm sure there's a number of resources, but there's not one collective resource there. There's probably the Indian Energy Office, but at the same time, I think we get a lot more help from the Department of Economic and Mineral Development, and that's no offense to anybody. It's just they're more welcoming. We've worked with them longer, and I believe the Indian Energy Office changes hands quite a bit, and so for a couple of years they might want to work with you, next thing you know they don't. So I mean, it's really up, on that side of it. I would probably reach over to the Department of Economic and Mineral Development to assist us in these ways. And then we've worked with them, and they've put together meetings with Walea Johns and David Conrad as well with us in different areas, pertaining to tribes and development. So we've had those discussions, and DEMD had put those discussions in those meetings together as well for us. So they're a good resource, and that's who I would refer to. Like,
I'd also just like to say the national labs also have set-asides for technical assistance. I don't know if you've had success working with them or not, but at least on the website, there are opportunities there.
yeah, I actually did.
CJ, you're breaking up. We couldn't hear you. Still can't hear you, CJ.
Mute and then unmute.
I'd just say to answer Dr. Fox, I personally am working with the National Lab on several initiatives through our National Tribal Energy Association, but we are that's going to be one of the subjects of I mentioned this upcoming meeting with the certain tribes and the national labs, because each national lab has its own way of working with tribes, and there's not a unified way for the tribes and the national labs to work together. But I think we're moving towards that. That's the hope, is that we can create a unified strategy behind tribes wanting to work within the labs and for the labs to be able to help with technical assistance as well. That's why I had mentioned at the beginning of my talk about an all of the above approach to technical assistance and capacity building, but an approach to technical assistance and capacity building that is not one size fits all either. And so I think we're moving towards that. So hopefully sometime in the future, we'll have something to announce in that area. That's my goal.
Daniel, USEA stands ready to help in any way we can. I know Michael and Michelle have been working on the issues for a long time, but I think you'll find that on our board and beyond, there's a very deep interest in the topics, and we stand ready to help.
Well, thank you, Sheila. I'm glad to hear that. That's something that we will be hopefully talking about soon on next steps following these series of webinars that we have. That's something that, like I said, National Tribal Energy Association is thinking and looking at doing in a more broader way as well, is looking at policy development, but also helping tribes in their technical assistance and capacity building pursuits with the feds, but also with and it's particularly DOE, but with also other the national labs, and then other institutions like academics. I'm having a call with the Colorado School of Mines later this week, and then again my conversation with Boise State University. They're very interested in doing that, as well as the University of Wyoming. And so hopefully we'll be able to put something together, but we'll keep that in mind, that we do see the USDA as a very good partner for us, but potentially, like I said, as well as for Indian country as well. I think that the experience and breadth of experience and network and membership of the USDA, I think, is really important, and a lot of things that you do, not just nationally but internationally, with USAID and other agencies, I think is important, especially as we start to talk about work with other indigenous peoples throughout the world, because that's something that's really important to us as well, is that the indigenous nations of the US, of Canada, of Mexico, North America, Latin and Central America, and South America. I think we have an affinity and a relationship with folks in Australia, New Zealand, the Maori, and then even indigenous peoples in Russia and throughout the world as well. So I think that there's a lot of synergies, and hopefully we'll be able to have that conversation with the team and move forward.
Thank you so much, Daniel. We're there with you all the way.
Thank you. And Michelle, before we close up, I'd like to again thank everybody, Dr. Michelle Fox from DOE for speaking. Thank again, Sheila and the USEA team for supporting us. Thanks CJ Stewart, my partner and friend and brother at arms, for helping support the work that we're doing and this topic and others. And so again, we're look towards our next webinar that Michelle reminded me, so I'll let her close out.
All right, thank you very much, Daniel, CJ, Dr. Fox. It's been a pleasure, and Sheila, we're so glad that you can join us, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one. So the next one will be on March 13th, and our topic is going to be agriculture and forestry carbon management and hemp. So personally, I'm really looking forward to this one. It should be very, very interesting, and hoping to learn a little something that's outside of our usual spectrum. But please look for an announcement about that. Hopefully we'll have it out. Well, actually, we will have it out within the week. And if you would like to receive more details, feel free to shoot me an email, mlittlefield@usea.org, and I'll make sure that you get all the announcements. But thank you again, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure, and give you about 25 minutes of your time back. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.